The auctioneer's hammer hovers in the air, suspended between wanting and having. Below the podium, numbered paddles twitch with barely contained desire. Each bidder believes they are pursuing something valuable, but in this moment of charged silence, the truth becomes clear. The object in question is simultaneously pursuing them back. This is the paradox Seneca the Younger discovered in the golden halls of imperial Rome. Everything you own owns a piece of you in return, and the price of that ownership is always higher than what you paid at the auction.
When Seneca served as advisor to Emperor Nero, he accumulated vast wealth while teaching philosophy to the most powerful man in the ancient world. His estates sprawled across the empire, his influence reached into every corner of Roman politics, and his philosophical writings shaped minds across generations. Yet Seneca understood something that eluded both his contemporaries and most people today: that true freedom requires recognizing the hidden cost of attachment itself. The first teaching emerges from watching how attachment operates below the threshold of consciousness. Seneca observed that we rarely choose our attachments deliberately. Instead, they choose us. The relationship that starts as pleasure becomes a source of anxiety when we realize we cannot bear to lose it. The career achievement that brings satisfaction transforms into a trap when our identity depends on maintaining it. The financial security that provides comfort becomes a prison when the fear of losing it controls every major decision. This is why Seneca practiced what he called premeditatio malorum, not as pessimistic thinking, but as a form of attachment audit. By imagining the loss of his wealth, his position, his health, his relationships, he could identify which losses would devastate him and which would merely inconvenience him. Things that felt devastating in imagination were the things that secretly owned him in reality. The second teaching reveals itself in how Seneca handled his actual losses. When Nero's paranoia eventually turned against him, Seneca lost his political influence, much of his wealth, and ultimately his life. But historical accounts show that he met each loss with remarkable equanimity. This wasn't because he didn't value what he lost, but because he had spent years loosening his grip on outcomes while tightening his grip on his response to outcomes. Seneca's approach was not to reject all worldly goods, but to enjoy them while they lasted without organizing his peace around keeping them. He could appreciate fine wine without needing it for happiness. He could value friendship without depending on it for identity. He could use wealth wisely without requiring it for security. This practice of holding external goods lightly while holding character firmly became the foundation of his philosophical freedom. The third teaching appears in Seneca's correspondence with his friend Lucilius, where he explores the difference between preference and attachment. Seneca preferred health to sickness, wealth to poverty, friendship to solitude, but he refused to make his well-being dependent on getting his preferences satisfied. This distinction allowed him to work toward preferred outcomes with full effort, while accepting unpreferred outcomes without devastation. This balance requires understanding that attachment operates through a promise it can never keep, the promise that possessing certain things will provide lasting security. Whether the attachment is to money, relationships, status, health, or even philosophical reputation, the underlying bargain is always the same. If you can get enough of this, maintain it carefully enough, and protect it successfully enough, you will finally be safe. But Seneca recognized this as a form of emotional debt that compounds over time. The more you need something to feel secure, the more insecure you actually become, because you now have something precious that can be threatened. The person with one precious thing to protect lives in fear of losing it. The person with 10 precious things to protect lives in 10 times the fear. The fourth teaching emerges from how Seneca dealt with the social pressure that accompanies attachment. Roman society, like modern society, organized itself around the assumption that more is always better. More wealth, more power, more influence, more recognition. But Seneca discovered that this social pressure was actually a form of collective attachment, a shared agreement to make external accumulation the measure of internal worth. Breaking free from this collective attachment required what Seneca called the courage of enough. This meant being willing to stop pursuing more when you had sufficient, even when society insisted that sufficient was never enough.
It meant being willing to appear less successful by conventional measures in order to be more free by philosophical measures. It meant choosing the social discomfort of wanting less over the psychological discomfort of never having enough. This courage becomes particularly challenging when your attachments are socially celebrated. The workaholic receives praise for dedication. The person who sacrifices everything for relationship receives admiration for loyalty. The individual who accumulates wealth receives respect for success. But Seneca saw that social celebration of attachment doesn't change its underlying cost, the loss of internal freedom. The final teaching reveals itself in Seneca's ultimate test. When Nero ordered him to commit suicide, Seneca faced the final attachment to life itself. Describe him meeting this moment with philosophical calm, using it as an opportunity to demonstrate the principles he had spent his life developing. He was able to let go of life, not because he didn't value it, but because he had spent decades practicing the art of holding all external things lightly. This doesn't mean being indifferent to outcomes or becoming emotionally numb. Seneca loved his friends, enjoyed his wealth, valued his health, and cherished his time. But he loved, enjoyed, valued, and cherished without the desperate edge of attachment, without the fear that losing these things would destroy his essential self. The practical application of Seneca's approach begins with honest recognition of your current attachments. What would you find genuinely difficult to lose? What outcomes do you need to have happen for you to feel that your efforts were worthwhile? What possessions, relationships, achievements, or circumstances have become so important to your sense of well-being that their loss would feel catastrophic? These honest answers reveal your attachment portfolio, the collection of external things that currently own a piece of your internal peace. The goal is not to immediately detach from everything, but to begin loosening your grip gradually, enjoying what you have without needing it desperately, working toward what you want without depending on it completely. When you can lose something without losing yourself, you discover that you can enjoy it more fully while you have it. When gain cannot corrupt you and loss cannot devastate you, you become truly free to choose based on wisdom rather than fear, character rather than attachment, principle rather than desperation. The auctioneer's hammer finally falls, but the real auction has been taking place in your mind all along, bidding pieces of your freedom in exchange for the illusion of security that comes from owning what you think you need. Seneca's great insight was recognizing that the highest bidder never wins this auction, because the price of attachment always exceeds the value of what you gain. If this moved you, comment "The Citadel holds" below. It is our sign that you carry the philosophy with you. Subscribe and I will see you in the next one.